Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
It's been a week since we last had a wee chat. Last week it was in Coatbridge, in the Coatney Bridge, as our Phil would have said. I'm broadcasting, but today, the first time ever, Barhead Boy is broadcasting to you from Barhead, which is fabulous. So here we are in Barhead, and I'll get the crew in a minute, but can I just first say a couple of things? Last week after we finished our show, the word came through to me that JJ from Webcom Radio had passed away at last weekend, and sad to say. And as I say, he does the voiceover at the start. You know, everything we do and everything we say is through a Scottish Prism was JJ's idea, and he helped me set up this podcast in the first place. So I am eternally grateful to him, and I'm so sad that he passed away. And commiserations to him and his family. He was a good guy, one of the good guys. Another one that's gone to the grave without seeing independence, which is a shame. But anyway, let me get in the team. So he couldn't join us last week, Mr. Boswell, when we were in Coatney, but here he is now in Barhead. Well, he's in North Dakota, actually. Mr. Boswell, sobered up, how are you?
Yeah, sorry about that. I got in a bit of a mess.
We actually expected that we were running a sweetener.
Well, okay. And it's just one of these things.
I remember leaving the party and looking at you and going, he ain't going to make it.
Okay.
But it was a great party. What a swell party we had.
Great was had.
And I've got to tell you, folks, Phil's mother is my new best buddy. What a woman. And Phil's brother makes gin, so it was a hell of a mix. And there's a picture going about of me falling asleep at the dinner table, but that's another story for another day. So, without further ado, and of course we've got our favourite lawyer is here from Clickmannanshire, our Eva. Eva, my friend, how are you? Oh, and there he is. And we've got our new puppet.
You'll see a Lloyd here.
There's Lloyd.
Of Indie Knitter Margaret Tervitt. So all fans of Prism, please look out for another auction heading your way soon.
Yep, that's it. Lloyd's now, he can't leave the show. That's it. He's now one of the gang, and let's bring him in. Now that he's got his doll made. How did it feel? You've finally arrived, Lloyd. All these other gifts you get and prizes that don't match a Margaret Tervitt doll.
Nothing can match the doll. It was really, it was fantastic, just fantastic. What a
like mine, it's sadly very good resemblance. That's the truth. Fantastic.
Yeah, my daughter said it looks more like you than you do, Dad.
There's Mr. Boswell.
Oh, it's got a flick now. Has it got a flick? Well, I better get a wee flick on then. There we go. There you go.
That's better.
Well, thank you very much.
We just left the room.
Thanks, Margaret.
And here we are, down in the borders. Shirley Temple herself is here to join us today. And she's promised me she's going to be on her best behaviour. Yvonne, welcome.
I'll do the best that I can. I'm done with Shirley Temple and Mary Poppins, and now I'm in Barbie Pink. So I'm going to have a real Barbie world.
Does that make me Ken? I don't know.
Well,
that could be Ken if you're Barbie. So anyway, another thing that happened actually after the broadcast went out, ladies and gentlemen, on Sunday was the Women Won't Feast event in the Duffy Park up in Aberdeen. And as some as you may know, it was controversial that a lady, Julie Marshall, was assaulted by one of the trizealots. I had the pleasure earlier today to have a quick word with Julie. And we'll play that right away at the start, and then we'll talk about it after Julie's telling us about her experience from the last weekend. Techie, can you file that up for us? I'm joined by Julie Marshall down there in Airdrie. You know, more famous, the lady who was attacked and assaulted in Duffy Park last weekend, and she's here to share that experience with us. Julie, firstly, thank you Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for asking, Roddy. Much appreciated.
So, please, first question first. How are you after that traumatic experience of yours?
Well, thankfully, I am much better pain-wise, which is good. Psychologically wise, still a bit upset. For obvious reasons, it was rather frightening. And, being faced with violence is a frightening thing. But when you've just walked into a park in less than 5 minutes, you've had your property stolen and been assaulted for attempting to take it back. And it was some assault. I mean, I was happy at how I stood standing. I don't know. I really don't know.
Can you walk us through it? What actually happened? You've arrived at the park.
We've arrived at the park, Thuggery Park. Yeah. We were going to have our event in the bandstand. So when we arrived in the park, the bandstand was
event.
Women Want Reached event, which is basically just letting women come along and speak. We take a mic and a speaker so that they can be heard. The bandstand was already occupied by radical trans activists. So that's fine. We just moved about maybe 500 yards away from them and went to the other side of the park. And we had literally just started setting up. I had took the big banner. It's a big Women Won't Reach banner. It's about maybe 15 feet long. And I sat it between two trees to get the string to tie it to the trees. And this person has ran all the way over from the bandstand and grabbed it. And as we've tried to take it back, I've grabbed it because they're back to me, and I've tried to grab the corners, and they've swung round and with both hands smacked me. I don't know if you can see the bruises starting to appear now. So I've getting smacked here, and my glasses get knocked clean right off my face. And they were right in at me, and they were going to hit me again. Of that, I'm absolutely 100% positive, because the rage coming off this person was extremely frightening, because they were very large. Maybe, I'd say he was maybe about 18, 19 stone, really tall, a lot taller than myself. If this man, who was just in the park, as far as we know, with his family, was nothing to do with us, intervened to stop him from hitting me again. And as soon as he intervened, I kind of stepped back and tried to find my glasses, because if I don't have my glasses on, I'm completely blind. I can't see a thing. So that happened. The person who assaulted me couldn't have cared less. We had phoned the police by that time, couldn't have cared less, was not frightened of the police coming. He sat at a tree just 20 yards from us, refused to move. We had no further interaction with that person. And the police came. They didn't come to us to speak to us. They went to them and spent maybe 10 minutes speaking to them first before they even came to check if the person who was assaulted was okay. Now, I'm standing there, my eye was already swollen, and I've got a cold compress I got out the toilet, stuck to it, because it was very painful. And then when they came to me, I said exactly what happened, and they kind of minimised it straight away. Oh, well, he'll probably just get a warning. A warning is what they said to me. And I looked at the police officer, I said, seriously? I said, I've walked into a park, I'm in it less than 5 minutes. It's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and my property's been stolen, and I've been assaulted, punched in the arm, punched in the face, and you think that warrants a warning? I was like, you haven't seen the video of it, have you? And no. And so they watched the video, and then they come back and says, yeah, it is a bit more serious. But that time they hadn't even evicted the person from the park. He was still there, and they'd call another police officer to come in who took my statement. As they were taking the statement, I was visibly upset, I was visibly shaken, and I was in a great deal of pain, I must admit. So they took the statement, I gave them all my details, my contact details, and that was it. I refused for the event to be cancelled, because I'm sorry, but I will not let violence silence us. It's just not going to happen, not in a million years. So the event went ahead. My participation in the event, which is usually a bit more involved, I had to stay in the sidelines because I was too shaken to to be really that involved. But near as our event started, maybe we from the bandstand who were counter-protesting us were allowed to come within 200 yards of us. And that was, again, frightening. Not just for me, but for the women who attended.
Had the police
Because
left the park by this time, or were the police
no,
still there?
they just stood there and watched them and allowed them to come closer to us. And I don't understand that. I did ask the police at the end of it why. Because the women were visibly shaking. They knew I'd been assaulted. They could see my injuries. The police could see my injuries. And so when the event ended, the police officer that was there, the community police officer, he was wearing a blue vest rather than the kind of other colour. I did ask him, I says, why did you let those people come closer? He says, well, it's a public place, we can't really stop them. But there was already an assault on my person. I says, I was terrified. You let them get that close to us with a loudspeaker and they're shouting, of course, abuse at us, fascists, the usual, bigots, terrorists, swearing at us with a loudhailer. And this park was full of families. To me, that's, no, come on.
Did you make a formal complaint?
Yes, I did make a formal complaint. My statement was taken. And that was fine. I did say I wanted the person charged, but I was told it was not my decision. So when the way home from Aberdeen, the pain in my neck get really, really bad because of the force of the punch. It was a big person. On Monday, I could hardly move. For me to move my neck, I had to move my body. And I was like a burst couch on Monday. I couldn't even get off my couch. I was in that much pain. From my neck, my eye, my arm. I was in a lot of pain. And then I read, of course, on social media that the person had been given a caution and it said no injuries. I thought, well, define what an injury is. Okay, I wasn't serious. I knew I didn't have concussion, but I was injured. I was in a great deal of pain. Is that not an injury? That really, really upset me. And the fact that they didn't have the decency. No. I've had absolutely zero contact from them at all. And I really don't care what sex you are, how you identify or whatever. Any person who has been a victim of violence deserves more.
So
we deserve more.
If I go up to one of these trans zealots who's standing at a bandstand and I rip the banner off them and I punch them in the mouth, does this mean I just get a wee caution?
Well, I would assume so, but I don't think that would happen, do you? I don't think that would happen.
Exactly
If the shoe was on the other foot, I'd have been handcuffed and arrested.
Yeah, well, we had the lady that was arrested for putting stickers on a lamppost, for God's sake.
Tying a ribbon. Tying a ribbon, no evidence, no witnesses, charged, arrested and charged. So if they can do that for a woman supposedly tying a ribbon, but they can't do it for a woman who's just been assaulted, who has witnesses and who has video evidence.
Yeah, I mean, that big safety, the guy Paisley, the actor, who complained about being in a state of fear and alarm over a wee woman who was about 5 foot nothing.
Yes. So you've got to ask yourself, for me, a deeper question there. And the deeper question is the institutional capture of our police service. That is a question that must be investigated and spoken about and out in open, because the differences are just off the scale. You know, they really are. And I'm taking it forward. I will be taking it further. I will be making, obviously, a complaint to the police, which takes, well, it's pretty pointless. And there's other avenues that I can take, and I'm researching them all. I do have lawyers who are offering their help, and advice. So this is not the end of it. And we will be having our next event in Falkirk on the 27th, and I will be there.
So has anyone identified the assailant yet, Julie?
Well, the police have identified him. They know who it is. If they've gave him a caution, they took his details. They did eventually actually remove him from the park. But they must have his details if they've given the caution. As in, the women who come from Aberdeen, they didn't recognise him. So we're not sure if he is a resident of Aberdeen or if he travelled there specifically for the counter-protest. And just to say, we're not protesting. We're holding an event for women to speak. It's not a protest. And the counter-protest was organised by, I can't remember Esme's second name, a member of the Green Party. And I don't know if you noticed if you've seen Esme's tweets from the day before, advertising the counter-protest. And in one of the tweets was an image just saying it was about trans wrath. And that's inflammatory rhetoric, you know, and the people in our government who come out with the rhetoric that we hate trans people, that we're trans genocide. It's nonsense, right? We don't hate anybody. We speak for women and girls and our rights in Scotland. That's what we speak for. Right. We have absolutely zero interaction with them. We do not shout back at them. We tell the people who come to our events to completely ignore them because we just don't believe in giving that abuse back. As far as we're concerned, the rhetoric also of both sides, that really, really angers me because it's not both sides. We do not go to any events that they hold. We don't try and stop them. We do not protest them. We don't go without loudtailers to abuse them. We let them have their events. We let them have their marches without us protesting because we believe in freedom of speech. That's everybody's right in a democratic country. But we're not afforded the same.
Yeah, we noticed that the Alpha Party put out an attack. Well, they condemned what happened to you. But none of the other political parties have been in touch with you. None of them have said anything.
The Tories, my local MP asked for a meeting, and we were at the meeting today with Megan Gallagher, who was appalled about what happened.
Megan Gallagher.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's obviously, I'm in her constituency, but I've heard nothing from any other of my
to me, this
members.
Is across political. All political parties, anyone of any political persuasion should be against violence.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter what you believe. I would be against violence against these people.
Absolutely. I'd be the first to condemn it. It's unacceptable. You know,
in a democracy, yes.
In a democracy it is, and you've got to ask yourself the message that the police have now sent to these. I'm calling this person a violent thug. I don't care what their identity is. I really don't care. They're violent. They're a violent thug. And the message that police have sent is: you can steal from these women, you can punch them with impunity, and all you'll get is a caution. And I don't even know what that caution entails, or even what the caution was for. Did this person, is that an admittance of guilt? And the questions that I would like to, I would have asked the police if they'd called me, and that's a couple of the questions that I would have asked. What does this caution mean for this person? And what exactly was the caution given for? That we don't know. So for me, there's a bigger questions to be asked here, and that is a fundamental right to have freedom of speech without facing violence. It's completely unacceptable in any circumstance, and for any party should be, all parties should be condemning it, regardless of who it happens to. You can imagine the outcry again if it was myself who punched that person unprovoked and tried to steal their property. I'm pretty sure they'd be out in force condemning it.
Correct. If I go to a football match on Saturday and punch one of the opposing fans and steal his scarf, I'd be huckled quick as you could blink.
Exactly. Yes.
Would you deter me from campaigning?
Absolutely not. It actually hardens my resolve. And the other women, the women won't reach women. Oh no, we will not be deterred. we started the events. We've been pushing Women Won't Waste obviously for many a year, but we come back from Belfast and decided we wanted to take the same thing to other women in Scotland, but we wanted to go away from Glasgow, Edinburgh, because a lot of women can't travel. So we asked, invite us and we will come. So our first one was in Govan, then Ayr, and then Aberdeen. And we did expect a counter protest in Aberdeen because the women of Aberdeen get harassed mercilessly up there. If they have any street stalls, they get seriously harassed and abused, and the police do nothing. So our next event is in Falkirk. Then after Falkirk, it's Skye, because we've been asked to go up to Skye. It's the 27th of August.
27th of August, people.
They're all on a Sunday. Aye, they're all on a Sunday. Because most of us aren't working on Sundays, you see, because we're just normal working mothers and women. We're not funded by the far right. Can I just get that stupid rhetoric?
To anyone that's watching here, any of the gents that are watching in the Falkirk area on the 27th of the month, stay up there, these ladies, and to make sure these ladies get freedom of speech from these cowards, because that's what these thugs are, cowards.
Yes, they are. I mean,
and children.
Yes.
Cowards. And if there's other men there, and it's time, this is our fight as well, guys. It's our fight as well.
Oh, it is. I mean, we your mothers, your sisters, aunties, uncles, uncles. I'm saying, but yes.
To round this off, Julie, have you got any message for any women that might be watching this who think, oh, I was going to go, but I'm a wee bit scared now to go because I thought it was happened to Julie?
Yes, I fully understand that, because it is scary. It is frightening. But come along. You're not alone. You will be protected by. We've always got stewards there. We were just caught unawares because we were only in the park 5 minutes. That will not happen again. That will not happen again. If they want to steal our stuff, we will just let them. My reaction was just a natural reaction to getting my property back. But if they want to steal our banners, let them. We will still be speaking. We will still be speaking. So the women out there who are frightened, you don't need to make yourself present to us. You don't need to come that close, but just come to know that you are not alone. None of us are. But don't be afraid. No, but I'll be there. Oh, yes. Good. You'll need to knock me out there. It's just hardened my resolve. It truly has.
More power to you and to all the sisters and the brothers that go along.
Yes.
Good guys. Yes. As I say, it's our fight too. Let's get in it. Julie.
Yes.
Thank you for giving us your time.
And thank you for inviting me. Cheers, Roddy.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Take care. Bye.
Yep.
There you go, folks. Can I just say that since I spoke to Julie this afternoon, it's since been announced that the police have not reported, and there's no intention of reporting this to the Procurator Fiscal. I'm appalled, I'm disgusted, and I hope that we can bring pressure to bear. If I could start with you, Yvonne, it is quite a harrowing story for any woman to be assaulted by one of these people. I'm horrified, aren't you?
It's disgraceful, and I'm hoping that the new Chief Constable of Police Scotland, a woman, Jo Farrell, will show some support to the sisterhood. And I hope that when she gets into this new role, she starts sorting out those police officers who don't know the difference between a man or a woman. This whole event, there was incitement leading right up to it on the social networks by the trans activists. And what we've heard today from a victim, an eyewitness account, a very powerful statement from a very brave lady, is that was an unprovoked assault. It was GBH. The perpetrator left bruises on her face, and we saw the bruises on her arm. Police Scotland are a disgrace. I hope she does bring a private prosecution and bring the PCPC who dealt with her case to court. It is outrageous that she was exposed to this violent thug. I don't know if it was a man in a dress or just one of these lunatic who hangs round the trans activists. But that was clearly a violent assault on a woman. Now, the Metropolitan Police in London are in serious trouble for having this stinking attitude towards women. And we've seen what's going to happen there. And if it gets worse, I think that the Met Force could be disbanded. Well, I hope that the new Chief Constable, Joe Farrell, shows more backbone than that miserable streak who's sitting in office now, Livingston. The man who was getting in such a lather and a sweat because somebody had thrown an egg on a pavement. Can you remember that one, Roddy?
Absolutely, in Perth at the Tories.
He was getting all in a lather over that. And yet a woman is punched in the face by a violent thug and he's sitting back doing nothing. He's a miserable streak.
It's appalling, Phil. Two things. One, that only one political party and one political leader's come out and condemned it. Mm-hmm. Shocking. But there was something that Julie said in my interview with her, Phil. She says that she wants to question why she believes that there's been an institutional capture by this trans organisation. Would you agree with that statement?
100%. A couple of things. What Julie Marshall said, I loved it. Violence will not silence us. And that should be a mantra for us. And trans folk, another point on this, that trans folk need to know that we on prison support them. We actually support them. Yeah. It's the aggressive activists who seek to regress an extremely hard-fought women's rights situation that we have, and we've got further to go, that we are standing against as we support the rights of all folk. But we're adult enough to know that hard decisions have to be made, difficult conversations have to be had. And unlike the politicians, particularly in the SNP, we are willing to make these decisions and make the choice between not giving everybody all the rights to demand, but balancing it out and standing up for women's rights. Hearing Julie's account of the incident as an ex-police officer, in my opinion, these actions by the officers on duty at Duthie Park failed their duty of care to the public, and that is simply unacceptable. As is the reason they did this, and that's what your question's about, Roddy, as well, because a dutiful cop would have acted upon Julie's complaint. This means that the police have been instructed by their senior officers to act or not act in the manner they did in this case, and this has got to come from the Scottish Government. It comes from the political realm, and this needs to be exposed. We need to know who gave that order, that instruction, that conversation, who was involved, who's the senior police officer, who are you? Who are you, senior police officer that has failed the people of Scotland? Who are you, politician in the SNP? I believe it's definitely the Scottish Government who has had that conversation and directed this behaviour or lack of action. So, yeah, it's got to be exposed, and we fully support Julie in any action that is raised. And if the police continue to fail to protect the citizens from assault such as this, and we have to resort to civil action, I'll be on the barricades, and I, for one, am happy to contribute.
Well, on that, Eva, Phil's asking who gave this order, but we know that the Lord Advocate has given guidance. And you, as a resident lawyer, find that the police have not reported this even to the procurator. Strange.
There's a number of features here that require very close attention, Roddy. In the first instance, I would like to convey my sincere sympathies to Julie, as the rest of us do, and to the other women who were there. It's disgraceful that this kind of thing can happen in broad daylight in Scotland in 2023, 43 years after I started work, when I was struggling to deal then with women who were making complaints to the police of domestic violence and in the main being disregarded. We've come a long way since then in the context of certain policies relative to violence against women and girls, but an event like this and an outcome of this nature only confirms the comments made by the outgoing Chief Constable Ian Livingston, who said, in his view, just a few weeks ago, that Police Scotland is, and I quote him, the Chief Constable, he should know, it's happened on his watch, that Police Scotland is racist, sexist and misogynistic. He said it, others would dispute it, but that's from, the horse's mouth itself. As regards the Lord Advocate's position, what's been claimed is that police are acting on guidance provided by the Lord Advocate. Nobody can find that guidance. We don't know if it exists. We only have the word of the police for this. If it exists, it should be publicly known guidance. It shouldn't be secret. It shouldn't be hidden away. The police are accountable. They are accountable to the public. They are not solely accountable to the Lord Advocate. And in a circumstance such as this one, I fail to believe, and I will forever fail to believe, that there is guidance available to police that says when you have corroborated, credible, reliable, first-hand primary evidence of assault, that's a repeated assault because there were at least 2 blows on a woman, which is unprovoked in broad daylight by a complete stranger, there can be no circumstances, absolutely none, where that can ever justify anything less than charges being preferred by the police, a written report going to the Procurator Fiscal, and the Fiscal decides whether or not to prosecute. In addition, the Scottish Government in recent years has applauded itself and repeatedly pats itself on the back for taking into account the needs and the views of victims of crime. We hear about it all the time, that the victims are important, and I think it was yesterday the Justice Minister Angela Constance made another grand announcement about centering the views of the victims, and there were talk of the rights of victims to be heard and the sentences that were handed out to criminals to be something that the victims were allowed to approve of, if you like. And to see this, that the victim wasn't even told that there was only going to be a warning, read about it in the papers and was contacted by the media, only goes to show that you can trust the Lord Advocate, Police Scotland, the Scottish Government and the Justice Minister only as far as you can throw them. And if they don't like what I'm saying, they can take me up on it because every word is truth.
Absolutely. Lloyd, one of the things, Julie referred to the video, they've got a video of the assault. Now, we didn't play it for several reasons. One of them, and this was even before the word came out that there'd been no report sent to the Fiscal. It was just in case they had to do a private prosecution. Isn't it a terrible indictment of our country, Lloyd, where women have to get assaulted in broad daylight in a park in front of witnesses, and they have to contemplate a private prosecution?
It's an absolutely appalling situation, but it's like Julie said, there's a real issue here of institutional capture. We know already that Police Scotland has signed up to the Stonewall agenda, but is effectively Stonewall making the law in Scotland now? Do we have police officers who are making decisions based on an outside organisation and not the actual law and practice of the country? Because that's certainly what it looks like. But what's most horrifying about this is 50% or 51% of our population are women and girls. The people who are demonstrating and carried out this assault are 0.04% of the population. Now, if the police believe that the protection of 0.04% of the population trumps 51% of the population, then we truly have descended into the depths of hell here. But one thing I'd really like to say about this, can any of us imagine that a Scottish Government Justice Minister prior to 2015, if they had become aware of a woman being assaulted in broad daylight in a public park and that no action had been taken by the police, there wouldn't have been at least a statement from the Justice Minister? Can you imagine Kenny McCaskill making no statement when he was Justice Minister when a circumstance like this happened? How far have we come? how far have we come in having a country, a government, and indeed a police force whose entire value systems have been turned entirely and completely on their heads because of the arrogance and the noise of barely grown-up adolescent boys. This is beyond sad, and it's genuinely it's beyond understanding for most people out in the street. Real people in this country would never ever believe that it's possible for some 18-stone man to run up to a woman, punch her in the face, and try and steal something from her, and simply get a ticking off from the police. This is an extraordinary situation. It's wrong, and the Scottish Government needs to step up. It needs to show us what these hidden guidelines, if they exist. But we actually need Angela Constance to stand up for her sex and say assaulting a woman in public, in a public park, in broad daylight, is entirely and completely wrong. That's all she needs to say. It's not hard. It's been effectively the moral basis of our society for many, many years. I'm just shocked by this. I'm shocked.
Yeah, we know that SNP people and unionists and the mainstream media watch this show. We know they do, because when it suits them, they put the quotas in their newspapers and their broadcasts. I would just say, Angela Constance, do your job. Protect the people, all the people. Do your job, because we won't let up, and we will keep reminding you and keep reminding everybody. And the same with the mainstream media. Grow a spine. This is not acceptable. Yvonne, what also came out this week, and Techie, you put up the picture to the Labour Party suddenly discovered that women don't have penises, and they've done a U-turn. How sincere are they going to be? It's a welcome step that Labour Party at last has said that they are changing their policy.
Well, first of all, I would like to see Keir Starmer and that miserable sewer plum Annalise Dodds apologise to Rosie Duffield, because they have made her life an absolute misery and made her a target for death threats and all sorts of violence because of this nonsense about does a woman or can a woman have a penis or not. Now that Keir Starmer has woken up to the fact that they can't, he's done this huge U-turn and brought the whole trans juggernaut to a thundering halt. We've had all sorts of teddy bears thrown out of the trans pram over the last week. And this is a great sign that at last somebody is listening to "The Emperor Has No Clothes On." And I think that Keir Starmer has finally woken up, not because of any sound judgment. Somebody in his team has obviously shown him the figures that Lloyd was just talking about before, about how 51% of the population are hacked off totally with idiots like him who are saying that women can have penises. And is that the plural? What's the plural for penis? Anyway, now that, you know, and Lloyd said, you know, we're talking about something that affects 0.4% of the population. So Starmer has worked out, come the general election, which he's already predicting a landslide, I think it'll be more of a mudslide. I think somebody else has said to him, oh, should we continue appealing to 0.4% of the population, or should we throw a few crumbs to the girls, 51%? It's a no-brainer, an absolute no-brainer. And now that Starmer has woken up, much to the relief of Anas Sarwar, who privately has never agreed with all this cocks and frocks stuff anyway, Now that Starmer's finally woken up, I think we'll see this rolling out, and the last ones left standing will be Patrick Harvey, who hates women, Patrick Harvey and his mates in the Greens. And as soon as I'm sure that Humza Yousaf is probably having meetings now thinking, how can we offload the trans lobby because they're bringing us down? I think that movement has started already because one of the gobbyists in their ranks, this vile little thing called Teddy, has the equalities officer of the SNP has quit. He's left the party. He said they're no longer supporting the trans people. So this is having a ripple effect around the place, and I think that the Falkirk event next month, I think that we'll see more women who won't wish turning up at Falkirk. I quite fancy going along. I'm sure Eva does as well. And I think that we've turned a corner now, and we've seen the back of these trans activists. And of course, Phil is right. We certainly in the Alippa Party, and certainly in PRISM, we are not against men who want to put on a dress that, knock yourself out. Just,
don't knock anyone else out. That's the difference.
Yeah, I mean, do what the hell you want to do, as long as it doesn't offend anyone else. Correct. And we will support your right to do it. Correct. So that's my... I don't like praising Keir Starmer, and I'd have a lot more respect for him if he turned round and apologised to his MP, Rosie Duffield, because she had 3 years of being hounded, and now he's finally announcing policies that she supported without any acknowledgement to her. How rude is that?
Exactly. So, one of the things that did come out, I don't know if we've got a clip on it or a headline on it, but one of the things that Starmer said, because he's an absolute opportunist, like most politicians, and he looked at the SNP meltdown and decided, this doesn't look good, and he decided, that's made him decide, it's pure political gain. But, we've had a few, like Dick Leonard, well named, Dick Leonard, who's saying, oh, no, we're not going to change, and a few of the Scottish Labour, they're going to do what they're told. We were talking about it last week, how London has already put out the edict. From now on, we make all policy. You don't make any policy. You don't make any statements. We make statements. So it won't be long until Scottish Labour fall in line. I worry, unlike Yvonne, I'm not confident, Phil, that Humza and the SNP who have been captured by the Greens will be this sensible to dump the stupid GRRB. Are you?
No, I'm of the same opinion, and it's for maybe perhaps different reasons, because I question, it's all about motive. What are your motives for doing what you do? Why do you act the way you're acting? They're both acting for different reasons. For Humza, their strings have been pulled, the SNP are currently being controlled, and that which divides and deconstructs the independence movement, these are the actions that the SNP will continue to take. And this has been a core policy that has divided and therefore allowed the continued unionist rule of Scotland. So the independence movement will continue to follow this, and Humza will do what he's told. For Labour, it's a different story, because as we all knew all along, the branch that is Scottish Labour, of London Labour, of English Labour, will do what they're told, but by their advisors who seek to gain control over Westminster, because that's what drives Labour policy. They don't give a damn about Scotland, never have, never will. They've got a branch in place to pretend that they do, and what we're going to see, and this will come out in other whether the algorithms or their think tanks decide that a U-turn is required, then they will do whatever it takes to gain power. It's their turn. It's their turn. It's been long overdue. It's about time Labour were in, and they realised that they would fail if they continue to follow what we believe that the Scottish people want, which is a bit more socialism, and the English people don't want. This is why they get rid of Corbyn. So they're doing what their algorithms and think tanks tell them they need to do to get into power. And that, for England, we're not interested in this as much. Scotland, it wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't make any difference what Scotland wants, because Labour will do what England wants and needs to regain control over Westminster, because that's all they care about. And the Tories are almost resigned to the fact that, yeah, we've had a good run, time to hand it over, let them screw up again, then we'll take the reins back after Labour screw it up and we can blame somebody else. Because that's just how these two cheeks of the same arse politics works, exactly as it does in America.
Split on this as well, Eva. This week, Humza was talking. I mean, it was ridiculous. We haven't got time to go into it. But he was talking about getting back into the EU, the SNP using someone else's currency. You know, just absolute nonsense in these white papers they're releasing. But he did make a statement during that, and he said, if there was a referendum or an election tomorrow, yes would win. Now he used the word yes would win. Yet they're campaigning on SNP, a vote for SNP, not a vote for the Yes movement, not Scotland United. But if they continue with this GRRB, which it seems they're going to do, they're going to alienate more and more people. Will they wise up?
No, they won't. What Keir Starmer has just done is political expediency.
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago that he was interviewed in the BBC and he said, it is not right to say that only women have a cervix. That's about the same time as David Lammy, I think he was the Shadow Home Secretary, was being made a fool of by referring to women like me and Yvonne as dinosaurs who were hoarding our rights. So Keir Starmer's turnaround is only vote seeking. It's not genuine, it's not to be believed, it's not credible. He lost his credibility a long time ago. He's just made a volte-face. What Humza's doing is something that Humza thinks is almost as clever as Keir Starmer, and that's saying something. He thinks he can imply that a yes vote would be successful so that those doubters in the SNP who might have been starting to believe in Scotland United and in a constitutional convention will stick with the SNP for that one more push. Humza believed that either a Scotland United campaign would succeed and it was the right thing for the country, or that a referendum would be successful. He's got the mechanism at his fingertips to call a referendum now. All he has to do is to collapse the Holyrood Parliament. And there is still time to have an election to Holyrood on the 19th of October this year, no ifs, no buts. When he doesn't do that, it shows A, that he's cowardly, and B, that he's in it for party, not country. And I don't mind calling him a coward, because if he was in it for country, not party, he'd have taken up the invitation that's been repeated often to speak to other parties, to speak to Alex Salmond, to speak to the leaders of the ISP, to speak to all the people within the Yes movement, including civic leaders. And he would do something concrete instead of spouting empty, actually embarrassing party lines periodically. I mean, I think this week was it paper number 5 that came out in relation to the benefits of independence. Paper number 1 came out in June last year. It's taken from June 22 until now to write something that a 4th year modern studies student could have written over the course of a long weekend. And what we were told this week was that we'll keep the Scottish passport burgundy because that'll make it easier to get back into the EU. Well, why didn't we think of that before? We didn't need to stop Brexit on the side of a bus. All we had to do was to say Scotland wants a burgundy passport. And the EU would have been, lifting all the barriers and welcome in. Come on, Scotland, you're back. Did anybody tell Northern Ireland that? The Good Friday Agreement was in jeopardy for why? Because the passports were the wrong colour. I've rarely heard so much mince in my life, and it's getting worse by the minute. So, no, he's not serious. He doesn't mean a yes campaign. He means voting SNP. But if he actually means that what we know, which is that support for independence is at least 50%, what he'd be doing is speaking to the others, as we've said. He'd name a date. He would have an electoral event, whether that's a collapse of Holyrood, or it's a general election on a Scotland United basis, or it's a constitutional convention looking at all possible options. These are the things that would be happening. He wouldn't restrict himself to events occurring only within his party. And what he'd also do is he'd be appearing at all under one banner rallies. He'd be in Ayr tomorrow. He'd be standing on the stage at Ayr. He'd be pleading with the organisers just now to let him speak. And he'd be making grand announcements tomorrow, such as Scotland United will proceed, or we'll have an early Holyrood election. Let's get together. He'd be doing that. He'd be having summits. He'd be opening up premises in Edinburgh for folk to meet. He'd be inviting MPs and MSPs from all independent supporting parties to get together. He'd have councillors from all independent supporting parties and independent councillors who support Scottish independence talking to each other. It would be a real driven collective, not party oriented. So, nah, we're not fooled. We've been fooled before. Ain't happening again.
Yeah, one of the things, Lloyd, he was asked about, well, would you keep, you can say you can be British and Scottish and the two passports and all that sort of stuff. And they asked him, and he said, well, I'm not sure. I would just like to do a wee, hands up here who would keep their British nationality if a Scottish passport was an offer. I don't see any hands going up. Because true nationalists would say you can stick your British passport where the monkey put its nuts. And that was me that said that, not Yvonne. She wanted to say it, but I said it. No Shirley Temple here. Lloyd, another thing, well, never happened before. We've now got, and it was amazing. Can you probably say about Chris Hanlon, Techie? He announced he's going to run against the leader. Now, this came out, on the 24th. We're now on the 28th, and the media's gone silent. The SNP have gone silent. There's nothing about this. Now, this is a challenge. It's never happened before. I don't think in the history of the Scottish Parliament has the First Minister had a challenger ever appear. It's strange how everything's gone quiet.
It is, but this has happened before.
Oh,
and it happened in very similar circumstances. Well, not to a First Minister, but to the leader of the Scottish National Party. During John Swinney's disastrous leadership of the Scottish National Party, Dr. Bill Wilson, who was a member of the Scottish Parliament, the SNP group, a very bright man, slightly odd, some would say, but a very, very bright man, great asset to the party, great asset to the movement. Saw the writing on the wall that we needed to bring a real politician back from Westminster. So Bill stood as a stalking horse. I mean, he was roundly beaten, but it was essential that something like that was done, because just within a few months of Bill standing against John Swinney, Campbell Martin was thrown out the party. All of these elements, all of these issues built up and led to the return of Alex Salmond as the leader. Now, the circumstances here are not exactly the same, but I think effectively what Chris Hanlon's saying is, in the same way as many of us pro-independence activists believe that Mr. Swinney's leadership was disastrous, Chris Hanlon clearly believes, as many of us do, that Humza Yousaf's leadership is disastrous, but doubly disastrous because he's also the First Minister and in charge of government policy. I hope this gets to the floor of conference, but I think those around Humza, particularly those that have grown up during this period of no internal party democracy, the rule of the elite, they will move heaven and earth to make sure that this doesn't go ahead. I think in the end, it's a stalking horse. The question is,
who do you think he's a stalking horse for?
Well, I think it's a stocky horse for Kate Forbes, only because Kate Forbes did better in the leadership contest than Ash Denham, who appears, or Ash Reagan rather, who appears to have kind of disappeared off the radar, hasn't maintained her what I would say was a campaign. You know, you lose one election, you stand for the leadership, you lose once, you don't go away. Not if you believe what you said during that election. And that if those things have not come to pass, then you continue to campaign on exactly the same issues. But that's not happening. So I would suggest that this is opening the door for Kate Forbes. And I think there are those, even out with the Scottish National Party and other parts of the polity of the United Kingdom, who'd be quite happy to see Kate Forbes in place of Humza Yousaf. But this whole thing just goes back to the issue of a lack of a political core. Around Humza, there are people who have only grown up in the dictatorship of the previous First Minister, where no dissent is brooked, the line is created and followed. And I think his biggest problem, in real terms, getting slightly back to what we were talking about the trans rights issue and the volte face by the Labour Party, is that those around Humza, in the professional class in headquarters and the SPADs and in the government, have all committed themselves to this ideology. This is the golden, this is the tablets and stone down from the mountain. Moses has brought it. Nothing can change this. This is the word of God. And it's impossible for them to recognise the political disaster that faces them. And it's even less possible for them to realise that what they've been spouting for 8 years is frankly drivel. It makes no sense in science and it makes no sense in reality. They can't walk away from that because they've lived it. They've lived in this bubble and are continuing to live in this bubble. And this is where, in reality, the big car crash is coming. And in some ways, the only thing that's going to protect the rump of the SNP is if Chris Hanlon's sort of attempt does lead to a proper leadership election and a change of First Minister and a change of leader.
It would help. We all have, I probably shouldn't say I'll be getting inundated with people now sending me direct messages, but I hear there's three at least in Holyrood about to do an Angus, I have heard, from a very good source, and they're about to drop the whip. So that could cause a bit of a uproar as well. Who knows what's going to go on. Techie, can you get ready? We got word through a constituent of Kirsty Blackman wrote to Kirsty, the MSP, the MP rather, up in Aberdeen, to say why wouldn't they support Neil Handy's bill for independence. And this is the reply they sent, and I want to get to the last part of it, which is coloured there. If you notice what it says, that the only way the issue of independence and the demand that Westminster parties listen to the people of Scotland is for the SNP to win the next election in Scotland on a platform of devolution and a choice for Scotland's future. On a platform of devolution, Yvonne, what do you make of that?
Often said on Prism that the SNP has morphed silently from being a party of independence to a party of devolution. And the D word has been mentioned quite often in recent weeks. And there it is in black and white. And I showed it to a friend of mine in the SNP, and he was shocked. And he said he wanted to take it up with a higher authority. Whether they do anything about it or not, who knows? But it is very telling. And I really do think that the whole Sturgeon project is now collapsing. And because poor Humza Yousaf is the continuity candidate, or was the continuity candidate, when it collapses, he'll go down with it. And we haven't really covered it a great deal so far, but this row over the demise of Teddy Hope, one of these users of nouns and pronouns and whatever, quitting as a qualities officer from the SNP.
That was in 2021, Yvonne.
Well, I thought that he'd done it
Someone
again.
put it up on Twitter recently, but he actually quit in 2021.
Oh, well, it sure shows I've got my finger on the pulse, doesn't it?
I believe he's in the Greens now. I might be mistaken, but I think he's in the Greens.
Oh, right. Well, I've picked this up wrong because I was told that he had left as a qualities officer, but oh well, there you go.
When you were talking to your friend who said he was going to a higher authority in the SNP, was he referring to Patrick Harvey or Lorna Slater? Because they seem to be the higher authority in the SNP.
I have no idea, but he was truly shocked. I mean, this is one of the original SNP members who is a yes person through and through and wants nothing less than independence. And this bombshell will really send shockwaves around. And, you know, I've often said that if the SNP want to get on, they've got to dump the Greens. Well, when they're offloading the Greens, they need to get rid of Kirsty as well. She's bloody useless. She's a liability. And not only does she not know what is a woman, she doesn't even know if she's a woman or not. You know, she's barking bloody mad and shouldn't be in a position of any authority, as this email shows. And thank you to the person who sent in the email. There must be lots more emails written by MSPs and MPs out there that I'm sure we'd love to see.
Absolutely. Phil, as an SNP man, how do you feel about hearing that they're going to fight on devolution?
It sickens me. I mean, it's an absolute betrayal of the core principle of why and it's also a lie. You're lying to the people because everyone, including Kirsty, was voted in on the ticket of independence, nothing less. So, folk of Aberdeen, get rid of Kirsty. And for the rest of Scotland, get rid of everyone else who does not back independence and nothing else. All of us in SNP have been voted in for the primary function of obtaining independence for our people and our country. Nothing less, and certainly not devolution, continuation of the status quo. So SNP also, if you're running the next election on a Devo Max ticket, which Kirsty clearly believes and numerous other ones have hinted.
Well, Stephen Flynn said the exact same.
Exactly. They've been saying this for a while, and they have been, and we've said for some time, they've been saying this for some time. You're betraying us. So hell mend them, but they should have the courage to stand on that policy if they believe in it, as Kirsty and Stephen and a number of other ones clearly do, or at least they're doing what they're told. I worked Kirsty's constituency many times when I was up in Aberdeenshire. In Aberdeen in the Yes campaign and for SNP, and the activists and voters are strong on Scottish independence. That's why Kirsty's majority was a good one, because it's not Kirsty's majority and it's not my majority, it's not Keir Starmer's majority, it's the political party's majority and the policies upon which they stand and what the voters understand of these policies. I think we need to be clear, we need to get a message out there. If the SNP, as it for all of us is clearly the case, are backing away from independence and have been since Nicola came in and heading towards a Devo Max ticket, then let's get rid of them. Let's vote them out. If you want to stand on that, make it your prime directive. Be honest with the people. We deserve it. We're not stupid. More and more people are catching on to what's going on here, which is why Humza doesn't deserve to continue. He should be finished just like Nicola. I think anyone who betrays the core principles of what we stand for, given the sacrifices that have made by many and the death, many who will die before we will see it or are gone already. Betrayal cannot, for that kind of level of betrayal, can't be forgiven. So for me, Humza is a waste of space for me. The guy's a clown, and we need rid. He's spineless, gutless, gormless, witless, and it's time he was gone.
I'm tending to begin to believe it, unless I My preferred way of death is to live to age 100 shot by a jealous husband. Unless that happens, I don't think I will be seeing independence. I really don't. We're running out of time as always, guys. There's a couple of things I really want to cover, Eva, and I've got two items together. One, a dear friend of independence, Lord George Fawkes, this week, coming out with his famous phrase about the union was never meant to be about equals. It's a myth set up by the SNP. So at least they admit the truth, what the rest of us have been saying. We're a colony. And it's people like George Fawkes born in this country who buy into it.
No, it was never meant to be a union. Is this a union of equal partners? No, it was never meant to be a union of equal partners. That is a myth that has been put around by the SNP.
What can you say?
It's not playing. And the other one was, of course, that there's when they decide something that the Scottish Government's doing that they believe is actually helping independence, they're going to penalise the Scottish Government up to and including suspending MSPs or MPs from their duties. Is this devolution democracy or imperialism and dictatorship?
It doesn't really matter what it is. It's certainly a lack of respect towards the devolved institutions of the UK, but it's happening as a consequence of the complete inaction of the Scottish Government as regards independence. We had it rammed down our throats in the last few years from Nicola Sturgeon that this was about defending devolution, defending democracy. She made the cardinal error when she went to the Supreme Court with that flawed case. But between then and now, all that we've seen are people, including obviously Hamza Yousaf, continuing to dig and dig and dig, and the hole is just getting deeper. The only way to fight Westminster and the only way to preserve power in Scotland is to have a real fight for independence. That way, you take the fight to them. And this whole charade that we've got in Scotland just now only indicates the lack of political nuance, the lack of political skill, the lack of strategy, and the lack of understanding and imagination on the part of the people who seek to lead Scotland. Because if you ask Westminster for something and they say no, you don't scurry away back into your box and leave it another few months until the next time that you ask. You have a multifaceted strategy where you talk about loudly and at length about people power, about the potential for having a referendum, whether Westminster consents or not, about getting people out on the streets, encouraging folk to attend every demonstration that there is, not just those that seek to have the party's, favourite stamp on them. You talk about what to do to bring a Westminster election to the forefront of the international stage because you make it a fight about Scottish independence. You speak about what you can do positively in Holyrood to make Scotland a better place. You get out and you have public meetings with everybody who wants to come along and speak and be heard. You don't have meetings restricted to party members only. You do what we're doing. You have events such as 60 Wee Alba books that are free and open to everybody who wants to join in and to hear what's going on and to make their own views heard. You do what we're doing in Alba. You have equalities events. We've had one in Abbeyview in Dunfermline. We had another one yesterday in Dundee. There's one on Monday in Glenrothes, and there's Tuesday in Glenrothes, and one next Thursday in Perth. We'll cover as much of Scotland as we can. And what we're doing there is speaking to ordinary people, getting people signed up onto the electoral register, encouraging people to vote because we're talking to them about making Scotland a better place, and we're taking the case for independence to the people practically every day of the week, to the people, not to the members of one political party, but to everybody who wants to listen and come along and challenge us, but make the case for independence, because in its absence, all that will happen is that Westminster's threats, which may be empty at the moment and may be quite jocular in the context of Lord Fawkes, will take a sinister turn for the worse, and our powers that we currently have, meagre though they are at times, will be stripped away and they'll disappear like snot off a dike if we continue to be led by fools who have not the courage of their own convictions.
No, yeah, on that same theme, Lloyd, was another one that Westminster decided that they will now take care of all eco decisions on green policies, and that Holyrood will be excluded. However, they're putting in a proviso that both Belfast and Cardiff will have to give approval, but Edinburgh will just be stood on, pushed out the way. And our people want to, the SNP want to fight this election on devolution. Devolution tells you, you know your place, sit at the back of the bus and shut up, Scotland.
Yeah, there's two things here, Roddy. I mean, the first one on taking away the environmental powers is, you know, if people can't see that that's patently, obviously a product of the free ports agreement. Wales doesn't have a free port. Northern Ireland's not getting a free port. We're the ones that's getting a free port, and so long as our parliament has some element of control over environment, then that could be restrictive for Mr. Radcliffe of INEOS and the various others involved. But on the other issue of attacks on devolution, there's only one answer to the so-called attacks on devolution. Independence is the answer. And every time you don't say you're defending devolution, it's an example of how we are in an arrangement with a bad partner who can't tell you the truth, who can't treat you as an equal, as the gorgeous George has told us. But the fact of the matter is, that's grist to your mill. Right. You know, you want to attack devolution, well, why would we defend it when what we actually want is independence? It's easy stuff. You know, excuse me, hello, my name's Jerry Adams. I don't want to defend devolution. I want a united Ireland. You know, where is the mindset that they want to talk about defending devolution? You knock on a door anywhere in a housing estate in Scotland and say, do you want us to go out there and defend devolution, or do you want us to get your bairns a job, a decent education, make sure you've got a dentist? You know, devolution means nothing to the people of this country. We've had it for 25 years. It's done. It's over. It's been proven that it does not deliver on the essential needs that the people of this country have. And if it's getting attacked, then the attack back is, fine then, we'll go our own road.
Yeah, there's one last, there's so many other items I wanted to cover this week, but the enemy is always is the time. But on this last one, Yvonne, your friend Patrick Harvey, your hero, come out with another one of his belters this week, which is he wants everyone to get a new boiler at about $4,000 each, and or heat pumps. Now, has anyone funded this or done a feasibility study before they come out with another one of their crazy policies? And you know, and he's been allowed to say it, and Holmes has said nothing. Has anyone thought? I mean, if you're, as Lloyd's talking about, if you're struggling to put a meal on the table 2 or 3 days a week, the last thing you need is some asshole telling you that you need to buy a $4,000 new boiler. It's insanity.
Absolutely. He's just not of the real world. And if he's watching this, I would say get yourself along to Glen Rothes on Tuesday for one of Eva's road shows, because this is where Leanne Turvitt is going to be the chair, and she is an expert on poverty, and she will give him a no-nonsense reason why his policies are pure bollocks. And I'm saying that's a word that I got from Radio 4 last week. So if they can do it, we can as well.
Yeah.
But Leanne Turvitt isn't like Keir Starmer, who gets, or Rishi Sunak, who gets his notes about poverty from a textbook. She has lived it. She understands it. And she can explain why these green policies are from flaming cuckoo land. It's, you know, Patrick Harvey, he needs to go and boil his heat.
Quite right, too. Absolutely. Take a few with them. Folks, the time we've overrun again, as we always do. We haven't get through half the things we wanted to. And at the start of these folks show, I say, I hope we've got enough to last a full programme. We always overrun. Maybe we all talk too much, I don't know. Anyway, it's been a pleasure having you with us. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed discussing these matters with my good friends here. But till we see you all again soon, please take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.